Two battleships sit in Pearl Harbor right now, 400 yards apart, and one of them is pointed directly at the other. Have you ever wondered why? I don't mean why they're both there. If you're watching this video, you probably already know the basics. One sank in 1941. The other didn't even exist yet. What I want to know is why. More than 50 years later, someone deliberately positioned a 58,000-ton battleship to face a sunken wreck, bow first, like it was standing guard over it. Because that wasn't geography. That wasn't an accident. That was a decision somebody fought for and very nearly lost. Let's start with the ship on the bottom. On the morning of December the 7th, 1941, the USS Arizona was moored along what the Navy called Battleship Row. It was a Sunday. Most of the crew were still below decks, going about a normal weekend morning, when Japanese aircraft appeared overhead just before 8 o'clock. The Arizona was hit by several bombs in quick succession. One of them tore straight through the deck and detonated the forward ammunition magazine. The explosion was so violent, it tore the front of the ship apart and sent black smoke climbing 1,500 feet into the sky. The Arizona sank in 9 minutes. 1,177 men died. Nearly half of every American life lost that day came from one ship in under 10 minutes. Here's the detail that matters for everything that comes after. Every other sunken ship at Pearl Harbor was eventually raised, repaired, or cleared away. The Arizona was not. The damage was too severe, and the decision was made to leave her exactly where she came to rest, on the bottom of the harbour, as a permanent grave for the men still inside. More than 900 of those men remain there to this day. Over the decades, more than 40 survivors, who lived long enough to grow old, chose to have their ashes placed back inside the wreck after they passed, so they could rest alongside the shipmates they'd left behind in 1941. A memorial was built directly above the wreck in 1962, designed by an architect named Alfred Price, who had himself been interned as an enemy alien after the attack simply because he'd been born in Austria. His design sags in the middle and rises at both ends, meant to represent initial defeat followed by ultimate victory. It straddles the hull without ever touching it. Today, more than 2 million people make the short boat trip out every year to stand above the ship and look down through the clear water at what's still underneath them. And if you watch long enough, you'll see something else. The Arizona has been leaking oil from her fuel tanks every single day since 1941. People call it the Tears of the Arizona. She is still there, still mourning her own crew, more than 80 years later, and she always will be, because nobody is ever going to move her. Now, the other ship. The USS Missouri never saw Pearl Harbor as a warship. She wasn't commissioned until June of 1944, nearly 3 years after the attack that sank the Arizona. By the time she joined the Pacific Fleet, the war had moved a long way from Hawaii. The Missouri spent the final year of the conflict bombarding Japanese positions at Iwo Jima and Okinawa, doing the grinding, unglamorous work of a battleship in the late Pacific War, far from the history books. But her defining moment came on September the 2nd, 1945, in Tokyo Bay. On her deck, with General Douglas MacArthur presiding, representatives of the Empire of Japan signed the instrument of surrender. The ceremony lasted 23 minutes. When it ended, the deadliest conflict in human history was officially over. That alone would have made the Missouri historically significant for the rest of time. But she kept going. She served in the Korean War. She was mothballed for years afterward, then brought back decades later for the Gulf War in 1991, where she fired cruise missiles into Iraq and became the last American battleship ever to fire her guns in combat. After that, there was nowhere left for her to go but into retirement. She was finally decommissioned in 1992. And that's when the real question started. What do you do with a ship like that? Plenty of decommissioned warships get scrapped outright, cut up for steel and forgotten entirely. Plenty of others get towed to some half-forgotten port and turned into a museum nobody visits, sitting there quietly rusting while tourists drive past without a second glance. The Missouri could very easily have ended up exactly like that. The reason she didn't, and the reason she ended up specifically at Pearl Harbor, specifically facing the Arizona, came down to a fight that almost didn't go the way it eventually did. In 1998, the Secretary of the Navy donated the Missouri to the USS Missouri Memorial Association in Honolulu, with the plan being to bring her to Pearl Harbor as a permanent museum ship. The National Park Service, which runs the Arizona Memorial, pushed back hard. Their concern wasn't really about the Missouri herself. It was about what nearly 2 million annual visitors come to Pearl Harbor for in the first place. The Arizona Memorial is quiet. It's solemn. It's a war grave, not an attraction. And now someone wanted to anchor an 887-foot battleship close enough that visitors might catch sight of it from the memorial itself. The fear was straightforward. Bring in something that large and that imposing, and Pearl Harbor risks stopping feeling like a place of remembrance and starting to feel like a theme park, with the solemnity of the Arizona getting drowned out by the sheer scale of the bigger, flashier ship parked next door. The argument went back and forth for some time before a compromise was reached. The Missouri would come to Pearl Harbor, but she'd be placed well back from the Arizona Memorial itself, positioned so that visitors standing on the Missouri's open decks during ceremonies couldn't actually see the memorial. The two sites would function as separate experiences rather than one combined spectacle, kept deliberately apart so that neither one overshadowed the other. That much was a practical concession, the kind of zoning compromise you'd expect from any committee weighing competing interests. But there was one more decision made on top of that, and this one wasn't practical at all. It was symbolic, and it was entirely deliberate. The Missouri's bow would face the Arizona. Not turned away, not side on, the way ships are usually moored for convenience, directly toward the sunken battleship, as if she were keeping watch over it. The official explanation given at the time was simple. The Missouri now stands watch over the remains of the Arizona, so that the men still inside her may rest. A longtime docent at the memorial put it more plainly when a visitor once asked him why the Missouri was angled the way she was. He said quietly that this way, the Missouri will always be standing watch over their boys. Think about what that actually means when you put the two ships side by side. The Arizona represents the exact moment America was pulled into the deadliest war in human history, December the 7th, 1941, the morning everything changed. The Missouri represents the moment that war finally ended, September the 2nd, 1945, the surrender signed on her deck. The beginning and the end of America's involvement in the Second World War are sitting 400 yards apart in the same harbour right now. One of them on the bottom, one of them standing over it, bow forward, facing her forever. That arrangement only exists because, in 1999, someone looked at what each ship represented and decided they belonged facing each other. It wasn't where the channel happened to be deep enough, or where the dock happened to have room to spare. People had to fight for that placement, and other people had to be talked out of stopping it entirely. Neither ship is ever going anywhere now. The Arizona can't be moved. Her hull is too fragile, too far gone into the harbour floor, after 80 years underwater, and moving her would mean disturbing the men still resting inside. The Missouri isn't moving either. She's exactly where the Memorial Association, and eventually the Park Service, decided she should be, 400 yards out, bow lowered toward the wreck, watching over the men who never got to leave. So that's why the USS Missouri sits where she does in Pearl Harbor today, facing a ship that sank 3 years before she was even commissioned, watching over a crew from a war she barely arrived in time to finish. It very nearly didn't happen that way. The placement could have gone differently. The Missouri could have ended up anywhere else in the world, and nobody watching her today would have known the difference. But she's there, bow toward the Arizona. And once you know the whole story, it's hard to imagine her facing anywhere else. Now, if you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, please let me know in the comments, and I'll make more of these for more ships. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss those, and I'll see you next time.